I did not know much about the homeless youth in the United States, let alone Ohio. I knew I wanted this topic, though, after watching a YouTube video by accident. I was surprised by the stories and how the circumstances were not what I had expected them to be. Here is the intro into the video that sparked my interest into the topic.
Tonight, we're going to open your eyes to something that's going on all around us, and yet most of us are unaware. You're about to meet 4 unforgettable kids who say they had no choice but to leave home. But not for any of the reasons you might imagine. They're not bad kids. No one was kicked out for drug abuse. And yet, as you'll see, they are all homeless, part of a huge population of kids that have been cast off. Come and find out why these kids are in a desperate search for what most of us take for granted, a place to call home.
My name's Rebecca.
My name is George.
My name's Dakota.
My name's June.
4 fresh-faced teens just coming into their own.
I'm 18.
I'm 16. 17 years old.
I'm 13.
They should be worried about prom, homework, Friday night football. Instead, they're worrying about whether anyone loves them. They're not even sure where they're going to sleep tonight. Now, this wasn't the way it was supposed to go. They had parents who loved them, rooms of their own, clean pajamas with feet.
I wanted to be a pilot.
I wanted to be a veterinarian.
4 teenagers slipping through the cracks, not living in cardboard boxes or under bridges, but under the radar. They're part of a frightening statistic. 2 million homeless youth are in America. Each of these kids are desperate for what should be most basic, a home.
I'm homeless.
And I'm homeless.
And I'm homeless.
What laws or acts are in place to assist homeless students? This is one of the first questions I had when starting my research. I found the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act of 2002 on Ohio Department of Education's website. Through that, they have the McKinney-Vento Homeless Children and Youth Program. The purpose of this program is to ensure that all children and youth have equal access to the same free and appropriate public education, including preschool education, as non-homeless children and youth. State and local educational agencies are required to develop, review, and revise policies to remove barriers to the enrollment, attendance, and success in school that homeless children and youth may experience. Local educational agencies must also provide homeless children and youth with the opportunity to meet the same challenging state content and state student performance standards to which all students are held. What is the McKinney-Vento Act all about? The McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act of 2002 reauthorizes the McKinney Act of 1987. It requires educational access, attendance, and success for children and youth experiencing homelessness. It also provides states with funding to support local grants and statewide initiatives. It requires that those homeless students are offered comparable services to those who are housed. It also requires that parents are involved. Parents should be fully informed of the enrollment options and educational opportunities available to their children and be involved in decision-making regarding enrollment options. What are the pros and cons of McKinney-Vento Act? With everything comes pros and cons. One of the pros was that the definition used for homeless was changed. It is now individuals who lack fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residences, including children and youth. Now this act can meet the needs of those who truly need help. It is estimated that it has elevated school attendance rates by 17%, and it has also greatly reduced enrollment-related concerns based on student residency issues. Barriers have been broken down through many of the requirements. Districts must provide transportation to school, immediate enrollment, the help of school liaisons to enroll, and access to Title I funds. It has also shaped the routines and responsibilities of education actors at state, district, and school levels. It requires districts to ensure school stability. The lack of funding is one of the biggest cons within McKinney-Vento. With each amendment and expansion, there have been inadequate increases in state and district level funding to support the changes. Many school districts struggle to pay for transportation of their students from shelters and other temporary residencies that are many miles away. If these school districts are struggling without budget cuts, could you imagine schools that are facing budget cuts and having to do this for their students as well? It also struggles with getting students placed in appropriate classes and programs. Often, their previous school is behind in records. I asked my old high school counselor her thoughts on the McKinney-Vento Act. I first asked about the pros, and this is what she said. This act removes all educational barriers a homeless child could face. Children can not only get transportation to and from school, but they are given the same rights and opportunities as those children who have a home. Yes, I know they might not be on the basketball team because they have to work, or they won't have transportation home after practice. But what these kids get in the hours they are here at school is life-changing. I remember growing up in Chicago, and one day I was supposed to be in school, but my parents took my brother and I out for lunch. I will never forget this day. I saw dirty kids, and at this time, I didn't know why they were dirty. They just were. And I didn't know why they weren't in school. I just knew they were dirty and they looked scary and had rough-looking clothes on. Later, I realized these 3 kids I saw must have been homeless. This act could have helped those children, and we can help these children now. I then asked about its cons. She said, the lack of funding is crucial. It puts many kids in danger of not getting helped. Lots of schools, especially here in Illinois, face budget cuts and downfalls. If they can't afford the things for their school, how do they expect to afford things for homeless students they are required to help? Another thing that can be a hindrance to the system is that parents try to abuse it. Surprising, I know. Who would want to abuse the homeless system? Some parents will move into a motel when times are tough and then never leave. This is actually considered a violation because the McKinney-Vento Act is supposed to be a temporary situation. My second interview, I decided to reach out to a family friend who is a retired employee of a homeless shelter back home. She worked at Home Sweet Home Ministries for many years and wanted to know what they offered the children who were homeless. She told me that they offered them a chance to do odd jobs around the facilities to make money. They also had a Mission Mart, which is just like a Goodwill. She said the Mission Mart was on location because many of the families couldn't afford the transportation to get around. This made it easy for them to go and purchase gently used goods such as clothing and other household materials. She brought up the fact that they had a playground outside of their building. This was another opportunity for families to take their children to a playground without having to leave. She ended our conversation with, "The mission will continue to serve the community of Bloomington until the need for homeless shelters is no more." She ended with, "If you're ever available to volunteer, please do. It's a life-changing experience and really benefits our community. And who knows, maybe you'll fall in love with Home Sweet Home Ministries like I did." Now I ask, is this justice? After my interview and research, I believe yes. It provides support in removing barriers, making it easier to enroll, remain, and be successful in school. It provides a choice of education at school of origin or another school of choice. It provides an opportunity for all children to succeed in education and life after. It provides transportation to and from school no matter the distance. And it provides funding to the districts in order to accommodate all of the homeless students they are servicing. This story changed my perception. It is normally seen that behavior or financial circumstances puts children on the street. Watch the story and see how he became homeless.
600 miles away in San Francisco, George desperately wants back in. He's making a call to the woman he calls Mom. She's actually his aunt. He never knew his real mother. And to say the least, life has been tough. A year and a half ago, when George was 17, his mom bought him a Greyhound bus ticket from Missouri.
Last August, my mom gave me a ticket to go out to San Francisco to live with some relatives.
With $50 and an address in his pocket, he set out on the trip. When he was almost there, he spoke to his mom from a rest stop in Reno. That's when he says she confessed to something almost unthinkable. The address she'd given him wasn't family, it was a McDonald's.
My mom called me and told me that I didn't have any relatives out in San Francisco and that I was basically screwed.
George is understated, but this is a horrifying thought, a parent literally putting their own child on the express bus to nowhere. How old are you?
I was 17.
This is like the stuff of fairy tale,
Yeah.
where the wicked stepmother is like, giving a hard time to somebody who doesn't deserve it.
Yeah.
For 2 weeks, George says he was forced to sleep in Golden Gate Park, right here in this tree.
When I was sleeping in trees, I felt safer, mainly because on the ground, a lot of people could tamper with you. The only thing that bad could happen is if you fell out.
So every night, he would strap himself to the branches and hope for the best. He used public restrooms to take baths with paper towels, eating almost nothing to try to make his few remaining dollars last. Did you think to yourself when you were in that park and walking around, I'm homeless?
I did think that.
A couple of times he tried calling his mom, desperately wanting a connection to the family who seems to want nothing to do with him.
I tried to call them twice. They didn't answer both times. Then I was like, what's the use? They're not going to answer anyways.
The big question is why? 2020 contacted George's mom, who says he assaulted classmates, abused his siblings, and was out of control. She says she had no choice but to get him away from her family at any cost. But George says none of that is true. Did you get caught dealing drugs?
No.
Were you beating people up?
No.
Did you ever start fires?
No.
And we checked with authorities, the schools George attended, even with his grandparents. None could substantiate his mother's allegations.
We see a lot of young people that are just rejected from their family.
George is not alone. He's part of a growing number, says social worker Toby Eastman, who helps handle the 6,000 homeless teens who come through San Francisco every year. What do you make of his situation?
It's actually fairly typical of many of the young people that we serve.
She says the trauma can produce a kind of emotional distance, and sometimes George does seem almost numb.
I don't miss them. I don't have parents at all. If I think about them, then I'll just bring back dumb memories I don't need to worry about.
I tried to get in touch with someone from the Children's Advocacy Project of Columbus, Ohio, known as CAP for Kids. I wanted to get in contact with them and see what they did to help homeless youth here in Columbus. Unfortunately, I still haven't heard back from them from my countless emails. I decided to do a video presentation because I thought it would be different than what we had all been seeing. Unfortunately, this was my first iMovie experience on my own, and it was a little difficult to get things going. There was many times I Googled iMovie for Dummies just in order to figure certain buttons and operations out. When researching, I had never heard of the McKinney-Vento Act before, so this was all new to me. There were a lot more things I had to research and look up before I could truly understand what I was reading. Research seemed harder than it needed to be because I was unfamiliar with the topic. Fortunately, I found a lot of things from the Ohio Department of Education website which I was pretty familiar with. I didn't want to include statistics into my presentation because those facts are often forgotten at the end of the class. I wanted to give as much information as I could about the topic at hand so that we would be most informed as teachers.